On the 3rd of October 2012, Natalie Jarvis left her family home in Kent for a late-night rendezvous with Adam Wheelahan.
It was a casual relationship. If anyone asked whether Adam was her boyfriend, she would say no.
That cold autumn night, nothing seemed out of the ordinary.
Slaters, she used to say, which meant see you later, love you, bye. And that was the last thing she said.
Just 30 minutes later, Natalie Jarvis was dead.
A member of the public driving down the road saw her body face down on the pavement.
Natalie's violent death made no sense to her loved ones.
Why would it be Natalie? She loved everybody, and everybody who knew her loved her.
When the devastating facts of Natalie's final moments were revealed, her so-called friend, Adam Wheelahan, would be exposed as one of Britain's most evil killers. In October 2012, 22-year-old Adam Wheelahan walked into Bexley Heath Police Station in southeast London with blood on his face and hands, and a well-rehearsed story ready to tell.
Adam Wheelahan turned himself in at Bexley Heath Police Station at about 3 a.m. on October the 4th. He said that he thought he had killed someone.
Wheelahan insisted he had not been the aggressor.
He said she brought the weapon and she'd produced it and she'd attacked him, and whatever happened to her was self-defense on his part.
It was a story full of holes, told by a man who seemed completely unmoved by the part he'd played in his friend's violent and lonely death.
This is a man who appears to have no concept of a conscience. No concept that he might be doing something that is utterly wrong. It makes him a very remarkable killer.
Though he believed he could get away with murder, a jury of Adam Wheelahan's peers would see through his facade. This killer's story begins in February 1990. Adam John Wheelahan was born in the borough of Bexley in southeast London. Living in the area through his childhood and youth, by his early 20s, he seemed to be an ordinary young man with a normal suburban lifestyle.
Adam Wheelahan had worked in a supermarket, but was now training as a BT engineer for the telecom company.
He'd always been in employment. He'd never been in trouble in all of his adult life. He'd been in work.
Nothing about Adam Wheelahan and his closest friends raised eyebrows or caused concern for the people who knew them.
Adam Wheelahan had a very close group of male friends. His best friend, Tom, he had known since he was 5 years old. Rather than friends, they saw each other as brothers. They had a very close bond. He and his other male friends all spent time together regularly. He messaged them on social media and in text messages very regularly.
These were normal people in their early 20s. They'd go and meet down the pub, chat to each other, and they do what youngsters with jobs who got money do in the pub. They'd drink.
In this atmosphere of revelry is where a young woman called Natalie Jarvis first crossed paths with Adam Wheelahan.
She'd first met Adam Wheelahan in 2008 in a local pub, but they were both in other relationships, and so there was no connection.
They didn't begin their relationship until 4 years later in the summer of 2012, after she noticed on Facebook that he had become single. After that, they began communicating.
In June 2012, 23-year-old Natalie was living with her parents in Swanley, Kent, just 4 miles from Wheelahan's home in Sidcup. She was born on the 28th of April 1989 to mum Adele.
Natalie's my youngest daughter. Gemma was 4 or nearly 4 when Natalie was born. There's nearly 4 years between them. And she loved having a little sister. They grew up very close.
Even though there was 4 years between us, we were just always together. Whenever I came out, me and my sister came as a pair. She was just fun, outgoing, bubbly, loving. And whenever Natalie was around, you would hear her before you saw her.
When Natalie and Gemma were still small, their family was completed by Adele's new partner, Mark.
I came into Natalie's life when she was 4 years old, and she was one of those children that you just looked at and fell in love with straight away. She was larger-than-life character, had more friends than you could shake a stick at.
As she headed towards adulthood, Natalie's zest for life showed no sign of abating.
Natalie was all about makeup and modern clothes and looking good and dressing good.
When Nat was old enough to come out with me, we'd go to bars and stuff. She'd spend a lot of time on the gay scene with me, so we'd go like in and out of clubs, Brighton, London. When we were out, we'd be dancing, we'd be chatting, just be enjoying ourselves, and like everything was fun. It was always fun, it was loud. We'd get up to mischief.
In 2011, Natalie suffered a heartbreak that challenged her usually sunny, optimistic outlook.
Natalie was in a relationship, a serious relationship with a guy, and he got her pregnant, but he didn't want her to have the baby. So we obviously spoke to her about it, and she made the decision. She didn't want to be a single mum, and she chose to have an abortion.
They split up, they got back together, they split up again.
He broke her heart. The relationship broke up. After that, we supported her as much as we could. She appeared to be going out and enjoying herself, but she wasn't the same person that she was.
We said, come on, Nat, you've got to move on from this. And she did, or she appeared to move on. She started meeting other people. We thought she'd eventually got over this guy.
It was around this time that Natalie reconnected with 22-year-old Adam Wheelahan, whom she'd first met back in 2008.
I think she was very vulnerable when she met Adam, and I think she saw him as someone to help her through the pain that she was going through.
In the early summer of 2012, they were both unattached, and a relationship began.
His name was being mentioned quite regularly, and he was picking her up from the house, taking her out, going to the cinema, eating out, doing those type of things. I'd ask her numerous times, is he your boyfriend, Nat? And she'd go, Mum, no, Mum, he's just a friend. We're just friends, but I know there was more to it. I know they were being intimate.
Though Natalie said she was happy with the status quo, there were signs she may have wanted more from the relationship.
I don't think he was as serious about her as she might have been about him.
There appeared to be an imbalance in Natalie and Wheelahan's ongoing relationship.
What's called a situationship suggests that this is an agreement between two people that they're only going to hook up now and again, probably for sex, and then just go about their lives and not be in any kind of committed relationship. That's all very well and good. But in a lot of cases, one party wants the situationship and the other party wants something more committed.
Natalie's family had little opportunity to get to know the young man she was spending time with.
To be honest with you, I don't really know a lot about Adam at all. I would love Natalie to have brought Adam home so that we could meet him properly, but because she said there wasn't a label on their relationship, perhaps he was reluctant to meet us. I know he came to our house when we weren't here, but we never actually met him.
He didn't come to the door when he came to collect her. Natalie would say, I'm off out, and off she'd go.
There was nothing that Natalie ever said about Adam that made me think there was anything wrong with him, dodgy about him. She was a very confident woman and trustworthy, and I trusted what she said.
I think one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't know anything about him, because if I had known a bit more about him, I may have been a bit more like that, you know, a bit more hesitant, like, watch what you're doing, be careful.
Natalie Jarvis's family had no reason to worry about her safety when she spent time with Adam Wheelahan. They had no way of knowing that the man Natalie was seeing had another personality, a dark and dangerous side that would eventually be revealed with devastating consequences. In the summer of 2012, 23-year-old Natalie Jarvis was a happy-go-lucky young woman living with her parents in the town of Swanley in Kent.
Natalie got a job at McDonald's and seemed very happy there. That for her was like a social life as well as her job.
I don't think she really aspired to be anything. She just wanted to have fun. To be honest, I think she probably would still be working at McDonald's now if she was still alive. I would imagine she'd be a manager of some sort, but I think she would have stayed where she was because people liked her.
When she walked into a room, it was like a social hand grenade. Everything stopped because Natalie had walked in, and the noise levels went up, and the population went up as well when she was around because people just flocked to her.
While Natalie was popular with customers, her family and her many friends, the one person who seemed not to appreciate her was the man she was in a casual relationship with, 22-year-old Adam Wheelahan.
Adam Wheelahan did not seem to think very highly of Natalie. He and his friends would refer to her as JC, which was a cruel reference to the actor James Corden, who they seemed to think that she resembled.
Wheelahan's friend Tom first came up with the jibe.
It was something like, yeah, she looks like JC, and I'd rather shag James Corden than her. And that set the tone for what were a grotesque series of boys saying dreadful things about girls that they never imagined would be seen.
Natalie was spoken about and treated as if she was of no importance to anyone.
I imagine that many of those texts were sent when she was just sitting over there waving at them. It was just callous, laddish, uncaring offensiveness.
Natalie had no inkling of the way Adam Wheelahan and his friends talked about her in their private messages. But in July 2012, she got her first taste of how unpleasant he could be.
Just a few days after they first slept together, Natalie texted Adam Wheelahan to say that she was pregnant. He did not react well.
Despite the revelation via text, no one is sure whether or not Natalie really had been pregnant in July 2012.
When Natalie told him that she thought she was pregnant, I think we have to consider, one, that maybe she thought she was, two, that she was testing to see if the things that he was saying to her, are they true or not. Where one person wants something different from the relationship to the other person always creates an imbalance. The person who doesn't want the relationship always has far more power. And they could be quite manipulative. He may have been giving her messaging that he liked her a lot more than he actually did.
If Natalie was hoping to discover Wheelahan's true feelings for her, she may have been disappointed by his response.
He wasn't happy about the idea. I think that was the first point at which a sour note came into his text messages. He sent the sort of ugly messages that young men in that situation can send, namely, well, it's nothing to do with me, you'll have to prove it, and I don't want it, etc.
Though it was perhaps not the response she was hoping for, Natalie pursued her relationship with Adam Wheelahan.
They were the best part of 1,000 texts sent by Natalie to Adam, and he either ignored them or sent a rebuff.
Instead, Wheelahan sent frantic messages to female friends asking how he could find out if Natalie was telling the truth about the pregnancy, and texts to his male friends complaining about the bind he was in.
It started, and this is not uncommon, with the bloke complaining to his friends that she's just badgering him and she's a blight on his life. It's getting him down, and then he starts claiming that it's getting him so down that he's ideating suicidal thoughts.
For people like Wheelahan who believe that they are in charge of the relationship, he is the type of person who's going to respond really badly when that control is taken away from him.
For Professor Jane Monckton-Smith, an expert on violence and control within relationships, Wheelahan's reaction to Natalie's news, though extreme, was not uncommon.
If she's saying she's pregnant, that's a massive challenge to his control over his own life, over that relationship, over everything. Very often, actually, in those circumstances, somebody like Wheelahan's thoughts are going to go straight to death. Quite often, this does start with, well, I'm going to kill myself, and that can move to, I'm going to kill you. For me, Wheelahan is showing me exactly who he is. And he is the type of person that in his relationships, he's going to become dangerous.
And while Adam Wheelahan never got a firm answer on whether or not Natalie really was pregnant, it's clear that his thoughts about her began to take a dark and violent direction.
On the 23rd of July, about 10 days after Natalie had told Adam she was pregnant, Adam tweeted, "It's all right to kill someone these days, isn't it? Think I might just do that." It is an extraordinary reaction, and one which is indicative of a lack of any kind of empathy.
Just about a week later, he tweeted again, "I think I might do it, #murderousmind."
As the summer of 2012 went on, Wheelahan's dark musings about killing Natalie Jarvis continued. And before long, his friends, the ones who'd exchanged misogynistic messages about Natalie, were also drawn into the fantasy.
On the 6th of September, Adam's friend Tom texted him saying, "Why don't you just get on and kill her?" So they'd obviously been talking about it throughout the summer. On the 17th of September, Tom sent another message to Adam on Twitter saying, "The end is nigh for JC, the end is nigh."
His friends seemed to goad him and encourage him. Some of them would ask him whether he had killed anyone, and he would respond saying, only in his mind.
On the 19th of September, Adam texted another friend saying, "I'm going to do JC tomorrow."
Whatever Wheelahan meant by that, nothing happened, but the exchange of messages fantasizing about Wheelahan harming Natalie continued.
I don't recall at any stage any of the male friends putting in a dissenting text saying, "Hold on, Adam, what are you talking about, you idiot?"
If anything, they seemed to encourage him.
Quite probably they didn't believe that he would actually do it. This was just more misogynistic banter that they were all getting involved in together. And they probably really believed that he wouldn't take it to the next step.
As summer turned to autumn, Wheelahan and his friends continued to exchange sinister messages about Natalie Jarvis's fate. She, in the meantime, was oblivious to Wheelahan's true intentions that were coming closer and closer to being realized.
On the 1st of October, Adam Wheelahan had driven Natalie and a friend to go to visit a Burger King. Afterwards, the friend was dropped off and Wheelahan and Natalie drove around for a few hours in the car.
Whatever the two of them talked about, something seemed to have happened during that drive to spook Natalie.
Natalie posted something on Facebook saying that she was being kidnapped, but I didn't really use Facebook a lot back then, and I hadn't seen it. I think he took her somewhere that she may have not known where she was, and she may well have said to him, "I want to go home."
When her sister messaged her about it, she made light of the situation and said it was just a joke.
Whether Natalie's post was in jest or in earnest, it seems to have saved her life. For that day, at least.
Natalie didn't seem to know how close she had come to death that evening. Adam Wheelahan messaged a friend that he had been close to doing it, but what stopped him was Natalie's Facebook post. He said that he had his knife ready and everything.
Once again, Wheelahan's friends might have taken his words as a joke. But in fact, he was deadly serious, and next time, there would be no backing down. On the 3rd of October 2012, Adam Wheelahan suggested another late-night liaison with Natalie Jarvis in Swanley, Kent. Around 6:30 p.m. on that Wednesday evening, Adam Wheelahan met friends for after-work drinks in Sidcup, southeast London.
Adam and his friend Tom are drinking in a local golf club. They leave the golf club and go to another pub.
At a third pub, by this time several drinks in, Wheelahan set the wheels in motion for what was to come. At 9:40 p.m, he sent a message to Natalie Jarvis.
He asked if she wanted to meet up and talk and have sex.
There was an exchange between him and Natalie where she expressed, well, how am I to believe you? You've been mugging me off all this time. And he went, no, we'll go and talk and we'll have fun.
At the same time as Natalie was agreeing to Wheelahan's plan, his friends were exchanging cryptic messages about what might happen next.
The spiral of text exchanges where no one's throwing a spanner in the works. I genuinely don't think they thought he was telling the truth.
As Adam Wheelahan and his friend Tom left the pub on Sidcup High Street, Natalie Jarvis was coming to the end of her shift at work.
Natalie was working at the local McDonald's. About halfway through the evening, she rang Adele and said, "I'm finishing early, Mum. Can Mark come and get me?"
And she came home from work, had a shower, and she didn't bother to put clothes on again because it was like 10:30 at night. So she put pyjamas on and a pink dressing gown and her slippers. Had a cuddle and a chat with me and said, "I'm going out of ad for a bit."
At 10:32 p.m, Wheelahan messaged Natalie outside.
And she texts Adam Wheelahan 2 minutes.
And basically she said bye. Schlaters, she used to say, which meant see you later, love you, bye. And that was the last thing she said.
She shouted up the stairs to me, "Love you," and that was it. And obviously I shouted down, and thank Christ I did.
Carrying just her phone and keys, Natalie got into the passenger seat of Adam Wheelahan's car.
What Natalie doesn't know, and what Adam hasn't told her, is that his friend Tom is concealed in the boot.
I think it's really frightening that Wheelahan manipulated Natalie to get in the car with him, and there's a second male in the boot. That, to me, is a terrifying situation. Why was that person in the boot? There's no reasonable explanation.
He was in the boot of the car sending messages to a girl who knew everyone from the pub saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm in the boot of the car. He can't be about to do it, but he might be about to do it." Words to that effect. And he tried to send her a photograph of his hand in the black, the darkness of the boot of the car.
Natalie just sat in the car with him and they drove to Swanley Village. I believe they'd been there before, where they parked up, and she might have just thought that they're just going for a chat. Radio was on and everything was just normal.
During the drive, she seemed to be aware that a warning light was on, indicating that the boot was open.
And by the time they got to Button Street in Swanley Village, Natalie insisted he stop the car. And she got out of the car and she goes to the boot of the car to check it shut.
This was the moment the sick joke between friends became a reality. In a secluded country lane, Adam Wheelahan carried out the horrific act he'd been boasting about for weeks.
He just started stabbing her in the throat.
In the end, he inflicts 20 stab wounds on her neck, one of them 4 and a bit inches deep, almost severing her carotid artery.
She fought back. The evidence shows that she had defensive wounds on her hands and on her arms.
Natalie staggered towards a lit window in the village, but fell to the ground before she made it there. Adam Wheelahan pursued her and carried out one final devastating act against her.
Natalie said to him, "I'm dying, please ring my mum." And he threw her phone away.
He simply took it out and threw it over a hedge.
So that she had no way of contacting anyone, of getting herself to safety or saving her own life.
She just died on the road and he got back in the car and drove off with his friend.
Adam Wheelahan returned to the car covered in blood. Tom, at this point, was in the driver's seat of the car.
Together, they drove in the opposite direction from where Natalie lay alone. As they headed back towards Wheelahan's hometown, he messaged his friends. "Done, not lying, covered in blood. So sorry I let you boys down." Just a few minutes later, a driver spotted Natalie Jarvis lying at the side of the road in Swanley Village.
Realises that she's been brutally attacked, calls the paramedics.
The passerby gave her CPR and tried his best to keep her alive until paramedics arrived.
They get there quite quickly at about 25 past 11. But sadly, they cannot revive her and she's declared dead at 11:30.
7 minutes later, Wheelahan and his friends were 8 miles away in Eltham, buying beer and cigars.
They went and picked up a friend of theirs. Together, they drove to a Tesco Express. Adam Wheelahan stayed in the car. He was covered in blood, but he gave his credit card to his friend. They bought alcohol, cigarettes, cigars, lottery scratch cards.
While Natalie Jarvis's family slept oblivious to the fact their lives were about to be forever changed, Wheelahan told his friends he really had done what the 4 of them had been discussing for weeks.
After the murder, Wheelahan joined up with his friends, smoking cigars, drinking, bragging about what he's done.
It absolutely defies belief. You're sitting round in a house with a man who is covered in blood, who's just admitted that he's killed his girlfriend, and you all just have another drink.
But before long, the camaraderie turned to horror for Wheelahan's friends. They urged him to go to the police and admit what he'd done.
Adam Wheelahan turned himself in at Bexley Heath police station at about 3 a.m. on October the 4th. He said that he thought he had killed someone in the Swanley area. At the time, he did not know if Natalie was dead, but he told officers that he had slashed her neck and left her.
That was definitely an act of self-preservation. It was going to take the police 5 minutes to link Natalie to him. Loads and loads of people knew anyway. So the best thing for him really is to say, yes, it was me, but I was defending myself.
He was interviewed under caution and he set out what was his defence, namely that she'd attacked him with a weapon that she'd brought. And he disarmed her, and that was how she'd come to be stabbed 20-odd times in the throat.
When the forensic team searched Adam's car, they found the multi-tool sheath with his fingerprints on it, and they also found his bloody tracksuit bottoms.
Natalie's phone was recovered from a field close to where her body lay. As Adam Wheelahan sat in a police cell in Bexley Heath, just 7 miles away in Swanley, Natalie Jarvis's family were waking up to discover their daughter was nowhere to be found.
The 3rd of October is when Natalie died. But the day my world come crashing down was actually the 4th of October. It was waking up on that morning and she wasn't in her bed. The worst thing going through my head was that she might have been involved in an accident and she'd gone out with her phone and keys in her pyjamas, dressing gown, so no ID on her.
I was getting ready for work as well at the time. I said, I'll try ringing her. I left her a message, nothing.
I phoned 999 and I said, I want to know if there have been any reports of a woman being involved in an accident. And she asked me how tall was she and what colour was her hair. And no alarm bells were going off in my head at all. And then she said someone would be round to see us in about an hour. And still no alarm bells were going off.
Just minutes later, a detective was knocking on the door of Adele and Mark Jarvis's home.
And this man came in. It was just so normal. And he was telling us to sit down. And I'm like, oh, no, it's all right. I don't need to sit down.
And he said, I need to tell you something. We found a body and we believe it's your daughter. The impact was just like being punched by Mike Tyson. You just, what?
And I remember screaming at him, how dare you come into my house and tell me my daughter's dead? You don't know her. You don't even know what she looks like.
Natalie's sister, Gemma, at work that morning, had been making phone calls to try to find out where Natalie might be.
The next thing I know, I got a phone call from Mark and he was crying. And he was like, Gemma, you need to come home. And I went downstairs and spoke to the manager that was in charge. And I said to her, I need to go home. My sister's dead. I didn't know how or why, but I knew something horrible had happened. And I was never going to see her again.
We weren't allowed to see her till the Friday. So between Wednesday and the Friday, it felt like I was just not believing it. It's not Natalie. It's not Natalie. Can't be Natalie. Ringing her phone. And obviously she didn't answer, but you still didn't believe it was her until we were taken to the mortuary.
When they pull the curtains back, that's when reality hits you and you know that you've been praying in a forlorn hope, because it was Natalie.
She had a towel right up to her chin. It was hiding injuries that he'd inflicted on her all around her neck. And we did touch her. They let us in. We could only touch her face and her hair, and we were kissing her and crying. But it's the worst image. You just don't want to ever see that. Your child lying there, stone cold, hard. I can't tell you how bad it is. It's just something that I'll never get over.
The next days and weeks passed in a blur for Natalie's shocked and grieving family. By this time, both Wheelahan and one of his friends had been charged with murder. Both defendants could request their own separate post-mortem, so it was some time before Natalie's body could be released.
Natalie's funeral was on the 19th of November.
Natalie's funeral was amazing. It was so big. She was in this beautiful white coffin. We wanted a rainbow on it because Natalie's life was very colourful.
She would have seen it as one big party. And it was. It was very emotional. We all wrote little notes and we were able to put them in a jar and they were going to get put in her coffin. It was very sad, as you can imagine, but it was big. Nat would have loved it.
There must have been upwards of 300 people there. People from all walks of life who we'd never seen that Natalie had had an impact on. It's just phenomenal.
5 months after Natalie Jarvis's funeral, her family attended the trial of the men charged with her murder. The trial at Maidstone Crown Court began on the 3rd of April 2013.
I was there every single day of the trial. We had a lot of people. I think most days there was about 30 or 40 people on our side in terms of family and friends that wanted to be there to support us during it. It was about justice for Natalie.
Adam Wheelahan and Tom were both charged with Natalie's murder. Both pleaded not guilty.
Tom was, after all, in the car, hiding in the boot, and then drove Adam away.
Tom was properly tried and properly acquitted, in my view. He was acquitted because, even at the very last minute, I don't genuinely think he thought anything other than, well, this really can't be happening.
Mark and Adele Jarvis had never before laid eyes on Adam Wheelahan, the man their daughter had liked and who stood accused of taking her life.
The first day of the court, we got a proper look at him. To me, he looked like a little boy. He didn't look like he was sorry.
We were filled with rage. Oh, it was just so surreal. All we wanted to know was why.
Accused of murdering Natalie Jarvis in cold blood, Wheelahan stuck to his claim that he'd killed her in self-defence after she'd lunged at him with a knife. For Natalie's loved ones, it was an outlandish claim.
The idea that she would go out to attack someone was shocking. We were just like, you're having a laugh, mate. My sister was just... She would kill you with kindness, like, that was it.
Prosecutor Ian Atchison presented forensic evidence that demolished Wheelahan's claims, starting with the pathologist's description of the injuries to Natalie's neck.
A hole where her larynx might be. That injury was the combination of so many knife wounds that the forensic pathologist was unable to quantify how many separate blows had caused that injury. All he could say about it was that the depth of the blows to that injury was 11.5 centimetres. That sort of furious stabbing to the most vulnerable part of the body, that's not self-defence.
He stabbed her more than 20 times in the neck and the chest. It takes quite a long time to stab somebody that number of times. He didn't stab her and then suddenly think, oh my God, what have I done? He kept going because he was rage-fueled.
There was about 150 metres of blood spatter from the car to where her body was eventually found.
She managed to walk 35 metres after the first plainly fatal spurt of blood. And then as each pulse came, it was less blood and it went a shorter distance as the life literally ebbed out of her.
The prosecution contended that the attack was of a savagery that couldn't be explained by Wheelahan's claim of defending himself. They also drew on hundreds of text messages to prove it had been premeditated.
We had incontrovertible text message evidence of him expressing the desire to kill her. We have a month where he demonstrates absolutely no interest in seeing her again. And then when he tells his mates, right, tonight's the night, For the first time in 1,000 text messages, she said, "All right, Natalie, why don't we go out together? I'll come and pick you up." And then lo and behold, within seconds of them getting out of the car, she is face down on the pavement with horrendous fatal injuries.
If Wheelahan's premeditated, rage-fueled attack had been in response to believing Natalie was expecting his child, the post-mortem findings were especially poignant. Natalie had not been pregnant at the time that she was killed.
On the 24th of April 2013, the jury retire to consider their verdict. It takes them less than 4 hours to come back and convict Adam Wheelahan of Natalie Jarvis's murder.
The whole family were, yes. Nothing else, no gloating, nothing. Whilst we're satisfied that he was found guilty, there's no elation in it. It's just that the system that we believe in has proven that you were guilty.
That same day, the judge sentences Adam, of course, to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 26 years.
The judge said in court, Wheelahan could have got rid of his phone, could have changed his number if all this talk of harassment was true. He didn't have to come and pick her up. He didn't have to do anything. You know, he wasn't forced into this. He could have walked away. The senselessness is just the loss of life, and such a life of such a vibrant person. It just beggars belief. It just doesn't add up.
He didn't have a soul. I recall clearly asking him, "Did you feel anything for her before this happened?" No. And once it had happened, she'd been your friend. Did you feel anything about her lying on a slab in a morgue? No. Do you feel anything about her now? Her mother's sitting over there. Do you have any feelings for that? No. And it was as if he wasn't the same species as us.
With her killer behind bars, Natalie Jarvis's family have been left to pick up the pieces of their lives as best they can, and to remember the 23 years they enjoyed with a beloved daughter and sister.
When I think of Natalie, I just think fun. Boom. There she is. She was just amazing. I am so thankful and I'm so lucky that I had such a perfect sister.
She was special. She was beautiful, happy, always had a smile on her face. She lit up the room. She was my world. Her and her sister Gemma are everything and more to me. I'm born to be their mum and privileged and honoured to be their mum.
What started as a simple story of two young people enjoying each other's company descended within months to a callous murder plot hatched by a man whose friends did nothing to change his course of action. Natalie Jarvis was a loving young woman who brought only joy to the people who knew her. In taking her life, Adam Wheelahan has proved to be one of Britain's most evil killers.